Hey, this is Chad with Drawn and Quartered. It is November 2nd on a Tuesday, 2021, and here's your news for the day. First off, it is Election Day. Congratulations, welcome to Election Day. There are a few that are across the country that are national interest stories, let's say, and the biggest one right now is Virginia, where we have Terry McAuliffe, the Democratic candidate, running against Glenn Youngkin, the Republican candidate. Now, this is a state that Biden won just a year ago by like a 10-point margin, 7 to 10 point margin. And now it seems as though Glenn Youngkin and Terry McAuliffe in all recent polling are at bare minimum running neck and neck. There are some polls that have Glenn Youngkin up as much as 4, but this will be decided a lot by the blue areas, the areas that are surrounding kind of the outer Metro DC area, and similar metropolitan areas. Those folks swung for Biden as almost an anti-Trump type of movement. Those were a lot of the blue dog Democrats that Trump brought on board during the 2016 election that fell away after in 2020 towards Biden, now seem to be swinging back towards Glenn Youngkin. Now, this is what's really interesting about this, is that Terry McAuliffe campaigned with Joe Biden, had Joe Biden in, had Obama in, talking about all of the great things that Joe Biden was doing. The problem is that a lot of those things are not things that people are particularly interested in. And a lot of the problems that Biden is having with Afghanistan, with the border, with COVID, with the mandates, those are falling on McAuliffe's shoulders and are hurting his chances to get elected in that state. As a little bit of a difference, Glenn Youngkin never brought Trump in to campaign for him. Trump commented on the campaign a couple of times, saying he's a good guy, he likes him, he hopes he wins, things like that, but never brought him into campaign. Terry McAuliffe needed to tie Trump to Glenn Youngkin, or rather Glenn Youngkin to Trump, so that he could run against Trump and run against Trump's policies, run against January 6th, run against the lying and just generally being a nasty person on Twitter. Glenn Youngkin didn't allow him to do that because he never brought Trump in. So while Joe Biden pulled down Terry McAuliffe also couldn't get a boost by trying to run against Trump. And that has led him to this place where just yesterday, he just full on lied, said that Glenn Youngkin was going to be campaigning with Trump yesterday. Didn't happen, wasn't going to happen. There was nothing even remotely close to that happening. Politico reported it, so it's not necessarily a Republican-friendly or conservative-friendly website. And Terry McAuliffe is just completely blowing out any sort of opportunity he has here because he's just forthright lying about his competitor as far as being able to try and tie him to Trump. He needs that so desperately that he's willing to fabricate it. It's not happening. Keep an eye on that election because this is why it matters nationally. If that election goes for Republicans, or if Republicans are super, super close on it, what you'll see is any other fringe Democratic candidate that sees that for what it is, which is a referendum a little bit on Joe Biden's policies, maybe a little bit on Joe Biden himself, maybe a little bit on conservatism, will recognize that if they're hanging on the fence, their lean should be towards conservatism or towards at least denying some of the more radical leftist moves that you are seeing in these big omnibus spending reconciliation bills. Those things need to disappear if you plan on being able to hold moderates and some of the more right-leaning Democrats that are out there. Kristen Sinema knows this. Joe Manchin knows this. There will be other senators and House members that recognize this and say, hey, I am far better off in order to be getting reelected to not go after fringy progressive ideas, because that's not going to help me. Clearly, America's kind of shifting, or at least Virginia's shifting, and this could be a barometer for the rest of the country. That's why everybody's keeping an eye on it. So pay attention to how that goes tonight, because that could be a bellwether for how we see future races, and especially the midterms coming next year. The other thing that's really fantastically important that we cover is the weekend. We have the climate summit. Joe Biden started off the climate summit by apologizing for Trump pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords, which is just super rich. The sincerity of this guy and not trying to take digs and trying to vault up off of his predecessor's back is spectacular. I mean, this is the great unifier, immediately cutting the previous administration down. The other part that's really spectacular about it is there's all sorts of things that are being thrown around, all sorts of commitments that are being made, none of them have any teeth, but just nice promises with smiles and handshakes, and not some of the bigger emitters there. China is not there, Russia's not there, doesn't matter. We're still committing to all this stuff that will be debilitating to economies, won't actually mitigate the way that we want it to. Adaptation is not being talked about, so whatever on the climate. But the funny thing is that Joe Biden, sensing gas prices at home becoming a real world dinner table type issue for Americans, called OPEC, the union of 13 different nations that produce oil, largely in the Middle East, to boost production so he could lower gas prices at home. Now, you may remember this, but just a couple of years ago, the U.S. was energy independent. We were producing more oil than we were taking in. We were exporting more oil than we were taking in. We were a net positive on oil production. Joe Biden has cut a lot of that. He has slowed that down, so much so that just a couple of years ago, we were at 13 million barrels per day that we were producing. That dropped down to 11.2 million barrels. Now, the 2021 projection is that that might come up to about 11.8, but there is a lot more capacity capability there from the U.S. And Joe Biden, rather than calling on the U.S. to fill that gap that he needs because he wants lower gas prices, decided to call OPEC. Now, I'll help you remember this. Global climate change is global. So oil produced in the Middle East, oil produced here, doesn't really matter if you're talking about climate change issues or where that's going to be used. And if you're going to be using that gas anyway, or that oil, globally, it's having the same impact. So that doesn't matter. Which would lead you to believe that the intensity and the emphasis that he says he's placing on climate maybe isn't as true or accurate or heartfelt as he wants you to believe, because on the flip side of the coin, he'll also ask for OPEC to ramp up pricing to make his prospects for getting reelected, getting a little political clout, getting his House and Senate back, not going to happen, to improve those circumstances. Not necessarily climate change worthy. Just came out on the same weekend. So please keep an eye on the rhetoric that Joe Biden's using towards climate change and the actions that he's using towards climate change. Luckily, we've got a bulwark against this in Sinema and Manchin, because some of the more aggressive, progressive policies that are contained in that reconciliation bill could be wildly detrimental for our economy, for any sort of growth. Absolutely hamstrings us on a global scale as far as competitiveness in both business, energy, finance. All of those different aspects are going to be curtailed significantly if those pass, which again, to loop back around, is why this election in Virginia could be so monumentally important, because it could be that indicator of future actions. Thank you very much for watching. This is Chad with Drawn and Cornered again. We do videos like this every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. A little bit of daily news, a little bit of analysis. If you like that sort of thing, subscribe down below. Hit that bell so you get notifications on each one of those days. If you have any questions, comments, critiques, think I'm totally out of my mind, leave a comment down below. We'll definitely talk about it, because there's not a whole lot of you doing it. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow.